Hello and welcome to Dialect. I'm Tony Gosling. Dialect is Bristol's first podcast, set up with a grant from the Scarman Trust in 2002 and goes out every Thursday morning at 11am here on BCFM 93.2. This week, Bristol artist Steve Lacey, who takes us on a journey through some of his research. Plus our weekly news update with Jason Yanakopoulos. Dialects produced by volunteers. If you want to join in, contact Volunteering Bristol on 0117 989 7733, and I'll repeat that number at the end of the show. But we start with Steve Lacey, Bristol artist. Hi, Steve, and welcome to Dialect.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
First of all, what got you into being an artist? I mean, you were on a few weeks ago, and we only just dipped briefly into what you do.
Yeah, I got a job with security, and I had a lot of time. And with that time, I'd been a bit creative, putting things together, like we talked about last time, models and what have you. And obviously, with the models, certain models, I've done research for that model. And now, today, we're talking about one of the main models I made was the New World Order one.
Okay, the New World Order. I mean, that's a word we hear bandied about sometimes by people who are pretty crazy. But is there anything really such thing as the New World Order?
Well, I thought like you did. I thought people prattling on about it, Bush Senior and all the rest of it, and our John Bush as well, John Prescott as well, talking about the New World Order. When you look into it, it's a bit bigger than just the word, you know, it's actually an agenda, what's happening beyond politics, which involves the United Nations. They're going to be funneling their projects through the United Nations, NATO, and it's quite chilling when you do the research.
Nasty.
Yeah.
The most chilling thing about it is it seems to be totally taboo in the mainstream media. You never hear the New World Order really, other than by maybe a Prime Minister mentioning it in a sort of nice context, or Bush Senior mentioning it and saying it's all going to be wonderful, this New World Order. But I mean, you have to go back a few hundred years, don't you, to look at where some of this started. I mean, I would agree. I think there definitely is some sort of parapolitical force out there that really renders most of our politics pretty useless, and some sort of pantomime going on for us. The mainstream media don't question it. They go along with the lie. And I think you have to go back to look at the Rothschild family in Germany, in Hamburg, I believe, and their influence has been immense. I mean, what they started to do was to be the moneylenders to kings, and then to, for example, get a very great deal of influence in Britain here. And many people believe that they were behind the British Empire. They financed the British Empire. They understood that if you control the money... In fact, there's a quote, I believe, from one of the Rothschild family saying... if I control a nation's money, I care not who makes the laws.
Exactly.
And you can see that almost playing out today with the bankers, can't you?
Exactly.
You know, they just do what they want. I mean, they get piddling little fines, don't they? Tiny fines. And that actually is the institution that's being fined, not the people that have committed the crimes. So they are completely insulated. They're above the law. So then you've got the Rockefellers in the United States. They made most of their money through oil, but then they've come to a similar position. They got out of oil. That's boring. And then they got into doing banking. So it's much easier. You press a button, you make the money. You don't have to get any oil out of the ground. It's much, much easier to be a banker. So that's what the Rockefellers moved into. And now, only last year, we heard that the Rockefellers and the Rothschild families, these two immensely wealthy dynasties that are just off the scale, you don't even see them on the Sunday Times rich list. They don't appear there, any of these rich lists, because they hide their massive wealth. Exactly. A lot of it is shrouded in secrecy. So what they did last year, Steve, is they got together in one company for the first time, one business, which is overtly there to buy up distressed assets. That's to say, as the financial crisis kicks in, a lot of businesses go bust, a lot of them quite big companies. The Rothschild and the Rockefellers joint firm will buy up those for peanuts. And then they're buying those assets very, very cheaply. So that's just my take on it. I wonder what you think of what I had to say there. Because
I think you hit it more on the nail.
Particularly the British Empire, because we're given this kind of thing, the British would be amazing. Actually, it was financed with money.
Exactly.
They had to build boats, didn't they? They had to educate people so they could travel. They had to be, and Britain, of course, was at the time the centre for the Industrial Revolution and for technology, and that was a large part of it.
Exactly, and you also find that these big families you're talking about also fund both sides of the wars. So so it doesn't matter who wins. And like, for example, Prescott Bush, George Bush's grandfather, funded Hitler with fuel, and IBM as well. You can go right back into
That's right. Prescott Bush, for example, he tried to organise a coup in the United States as well before the Second World War, as well as being prosecuted under the Trading with the Enemy Act twice during World War II.
Yep.
So there's your Bush family, pretty clear example.
Exactly.
A few of these dynasties really do seem to control things, but I mean, I look at Bush Jr. and I think this guy is not really able to organise, an event in a brewery.
He's a likeable fool, isn't he?
but he's not trying to con people. He's just. I think he was easy to manipulate.
Exactly.
I think that's actually what was going on there. Anyway, look, getting back to some of your stuff, I know you're interested in this thing, the Council on Foreign Relations.
Yeah.
And the Federal Reserve. So what sort of power do they have, and what are those organisations?
Well, interestingly enough, the Council of Foreign Relations, when you look at what they control, what they bind together, obviously the head being David Rockefeller, then you have the whole media. You have the whole military, you have universities, you have every single facet of our life are controlled or signed up to the Council of Foreign Relations.
So what does it actually do? What is it? The CFR it's called in the States, isn't it? It's based in the US.
Yeah.
And it seems to me to be a sort of shadow government run by big business in America.
Yeah, with agendas set for them. So they're scientists. When you talk about climate change or food, the scientists are obviously paid in the pay packet of these. So their reward, their grants and their awards, one of you, they have to go along with the system, be it false. And that's where you have to question most things.
Oh, you must, yeah. Especially if they control the CFR control. It's a bit like a secret society. People never really discuss it. Hardly anybody has heard of it, So, but also the Federal Reserve there.
Yeah.
They're thought to be a US federal bank because it's got the name federal in the title, but actually they're a private bank, aren't they? How are they connected up to the CFR then?
I think they're all connected because they're private organisations. They're private bankers. They have their own agenda. They create depressions and recessions and what have you. And it's all one big plan they're concocted together. I mean, there have been people like Ron Paul that's crying out for audit the Fed.
He's a Republican. He stood to be a presidential candidate, but didn't really make it, did he?
But with the media doing their bits, you got no chance. Plus, the votes can be controlled and tampered with. You know what I mean?
Voting machines in the US can, certainly postal votes here can be and have been tampered with.
Exactly. So you got no chance, even though he is, we've been a great.
So that's America for you. I mean, you've got all these government institutions. You've then got the Federal Reserve. You've got the Council on Foreign Relations. And really, what the Council on Foreign Relations seems to be, because it's absolutely swimming in money, in cash. As much of America becomes more and more impoverished, these guys are holding the loot. And they can do whatever they want. They fund all sorts of policy groups, this kind of thing, from behind the scenes. Now, there is an equivalent in London.
There is. What's the name again?
It's in St James. It's called the Royal Institute for International Affairs.
That's the one.
And it's a very posh part of London, just over the road from Prince Charles's official residence.
Right.
And it's kind of set up as, it looks very innocuous, but they are also nicknamed Chatham House. They're called Chatham House. And that's where the whole thing of Chatham House rules comes from, if you've ever heard that expression. And also you will see Chatham House on the BBC regularly. If something kicks off in Ukraine, Chatham House come on and tell you about it. Well, they are the British equivalent of the Council on Foreign Relations.
Right.
They are the big business, including the BBC, are signed up to it. The BBC helped fund it, believe it or not, even though it's nothing to do with government. It's completely not independent. It's just pushing the interests of the big corporations that fund it. So we've got something like that similar over here. But you said you wanted to do a bit of joining the dots together when you set off on this mission.
I did.
So how have you managed to do that? And have you been successful?
Well, not successful, no, but I really would like to highlight the dangers. Like, for example, many years ago, you never heard of a child getting cancer, or it's 1 in 100 getting cancer. Now it's 1 in 50, and now I heard a couple of weeks ago they expect us to accept 1 in 3 in the next 10 years.
But isn't that because people are living longer, Steve?
Well, having cancer, no, I think this is directed at the general population, the whole population, rather than just the elderly. And a lot is to do with what we ingest and what we're given. i.e. your aspartame, your vaccinations, your fluoride, and all these toxins that our body's absorbing.
Well, there's a tremendous amount of toxicity out there. That's true. Formaldehyde, for example, in new clothes. Say, for example, you buy a sofa that seems like it's got loads of formaldehyde because it's a preservative in there. I would suggest people wash everything before they actually put it in their homes, including carpets, things like that. It might sound a bit extreme, but that's another toxin. There's loads of these. Why aren't the government actually prohibiting these then? I
don't really know. Whether or not people are not campaigning enough, whether or not the people, the organisations, like for example the Cyril company, the FAO, the food company just withdrew it, and it was Donald Rumsfeld, I think, that put it through, and then he became a chairman of it. I mean, it is a...
This is a very, very dangerous area we're getting into here, isn't it? Which is where you've got food companies and other big corporations that are trying to do things that they know the government's going to resist and the people are going to resist. Yeah. So what they do is they put their people in the government.
Exactly. It's exactly what's happening, and same with Monsanto as well.
Now, also, with food and other toxins, you mentioned briefly aspartame there. What is aspartame and where can we find it?
Well, it's in most of our food. I mean, you try and buy a chewing gum now that hasn't got aspartame, you can't buy it. Your choice.
Right. I had a look the other day.
Yeah, your choice is taken away.
It was a long queue at the checkout at the supermarket, and I thought, I'll have a look at some of the ingredients of these chewing gums that they're sticking here for me to buy. Yeah. And not a single chewing gum is now sold without aspartame.
You wouldn't get it, no. And they say, very cleverly, this is for your health. We're looking after you. So a lot of reverse psychology is going on with the...
So please, listeners, do keep an eye open.
You have to keep an eye open, and a lot of, and especially the vaccinations as well. The mercury, the levels. I mean, I read Andrew Wakefield's book the other week. Fantastic book, and I won't go into too much, but there was more links to the toxicity in the vaccine than were being presented, and the fact is the medical company didn't want him to research all these links because they're all basically the same thing caused by the same problem, and that's why they had just got rid of him. And he's the fall guy for any time you go for vaccination. He said, "I want my child to have a private one." No, that guy's been struck off now. He's nothing to do with it. When in reality, the
medical profession has squeezed him out in a way because of the pressure from the big drug companies.
Exactly.
The trouble. They are so powerful now, aren't they?
Yeah.
They seem to be they've got so much money, these big corporations. They seem to be able to infiltrate quite easily various professional bodies. I mean,
very easily. And this is the problem. I mean, because it's such a huge machine, and trying to battle it one by one is difficult. So we need.
Hang on, Steve, though, because smallpox, for example, the vaccine for that is surely still a very useful thing.
Oh yeah, definitely. But
smallpox is a killer disease, and cowpox was discovered to. If you have a little bit of cowpox, that means that you won't catch smallpox for most of the rest of your life. So that's a good thing, surely.
Oh, yeah, surely. I'm talking mainly on the MMR one, which is the triple vaccine to a 1-year-old or 1.5-year-old child. The toxicity in those 3 combined vaccinations is too much.
I think the thing is, we need to know exactly what's in there before we inject it into our bodies.
Yeah, I mean, the immune system's not built.
Especially the children. I mean, they've got no way of knowing what's being done to them.
In the States and in here, that's why the increase in autism is like hundreds of %, and the other follow-up